The only thing my husband Richard asked of me before he passed was this: "Promise me, Claire, never go to the retreat house." He held my hand with what little strength he had left, his eyes searching mine as if he could bind me to that vow forever. And I agreed. I promised. For months after his death, those words echoed in my mind like a refrain I could not silence. The retreat house. What could be so dangerous, so painful, that Richard, a man who rarely asked anything of me, would spend his final breath insisting on this one thing? My name is Claire Anderson. I am 58 years old, a widow and a professor of literature at a small university in Virginia. For 17 years, I built a life with Richard. We raised our daughter Olivia, now away at college. We lived simply, comfortably, never wealthy, but rich in ways that mattered. At least that is what I thought. When Richard passed suddenly from a massive stroke, my world collapsed. I stumbled through the funeral, through the endless paperwork, through the well-meaning condolences. Everyone told me to be strong, to carry on. But in the quiet of our empty house, I discovered what grief really means. It is not just sadness, it is silence that screams. It is the hollow sound of a chair no longer pulled out at the dinner table. 2 months later, when life was forcing itself back into its cruel rhythm, I received a call from Richard's attorney. He asked me to come to his office. What he handed me that day would unravel everything I thought I knew about my husband and about the life we shared. A simple envelope, a small box, and inside them the key to a secret my husband had guarded his entire life. That secret, and my decision to follow it, would change everything. It would lead me to a place Richard begged me never to enter, and to a discovery that redefined love, family, and betrayal in ways I could never have imagined. The attorney's office smelled faintly of leather and old books, a place where secrets were folded neatly into files and drawers. Mr. Harrison, Richard's longtime lawyer, greeted me with a solemn look. He had been at the funeral, had shaken my hand, but now his expression carried something heavier. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, sliding a polished wooden box across the desk, along with a sealed envelope. "Richard left specific instructions that these items be given to you only after his passing." My fingers trembled as I opened the box. Inside lay an antique key, heavier than it looked, with a chain shaped like a leaf. It was the kind of key that belonged to a house, not a safe deposit box. I looked up at Mr. Harrison, confused. "What does this open?" I asked. He adjusted his glasses and spoke carefully. "A property at Pinewood Lake. Your husband purchased it about 4 years ago. He gave clear instructions that you were not to know about it while he lived." Pinewood Lake. The name struck me like a bell. I remembered only once hearing Richard mention it. His voice had grown tense, his eyes distant, and he quickly changed the subject. He had avoided every conversation about his childhood. Now I was learning he had gone back there and even bought a house. "Why would he do that?" I whispered. Mr. Harrison continued. "The house is called Ridgewood Estate. It once belonged to Richard's family. He reacquired it quietly, though it has changed hands several times since then. Recently, it has become extremely valuable because a luxury resort is being built nearby. Developers have already made several multi-million-dollar offers." My thoughts spun. Richard and I had lived on 2 salaries, his as an engineer, mine as a professor. Comfortable but never extravagant. How could he have purchased a lakefront estate without me knowing? And why hide it? I finally tore open the envelope. Inside was Richard's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. Forgive me for the secrets I kept. Ridgewood is yours now. In the study you will find my laptop. The password is the date of our first meeting, followed by the word hope. Go there once before you decide what to do. I love you more than I ever said aloud." Tears blurred my vision. Even in death, Richard was still guiding me. The key in my hand suddenly felt heavier, not of metal, but of destiny. 2 days later, I found myself driving along the winding mountain roads toward Pinewood Lake. The autumn air was crisp, and the trees burned with colors of gold and crimson, yet my heart was heavy with unease. The key rested in my jacket pocket, a constant reminder of the secret Richard had left behind. When I reached the carved wooden gate marked Ridgewood Estate, my breath caught. The name was etched in wrought iron, standing as both a welcome and a warning. With trembling fingers, I inserted the key. The lock clicked, and the gate opened slowly, revealing a path lined with ancient oak trees. I expected an abandoned property, something run down and forgotten. Instead, what stood before me was a stunning stone and wood mansion. its roof lines bold, its windows gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Impeccably kept gardens surrounded the house, and the lawns were cut with precision. This was no neglected ruin from Richard's childhood. This was something else entirely. I stepped out of the car, my shoes crunching on gravel, and walked up the stone path. Each step carried the weight of questions. Why here? Why now? Why keep it hidden from me? At the heavy front door, I pressed the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, and the door swung open with a whisper of hinges. Inside, I froze. The entrance opened into a soaring living room with a stone fireplace that stretched toward a vaulted ceiling. Light streamed through tall windows, bathing the space in a warm glow. But what stole my breath were the walls. Every surface was covered in paintings. Orchids in every shape and shade filled the room like a private gallery. Orchids had always been my passion, something Richard quietly supported but never pursued himself. Yet here, in secret, he had created a world of them for me. My eyes blurred with tears as I moved from canvas to canvas, recognizing varieties I had once spoken about in passing, ones I had only ever seen in books. He had remembered every detail. Near a window overlooking the garden stood a table. On it, a silver laptop rested with a single white orchid placed carefully on the lid. My pulse quickened. This was the laptop his letter had mentioned. This was where the answers waited. Before I could move closer, the sound of tires on gravel broke the silence. I turned to the window and saw a black SUV pulling up behind my car. 3 men stepped out, their faces so familiar it startled me. The same straight nose, the same almond-shaped eyes as Richard. His brothers had arrived, and from the looks on their faces, they were not here to welcome me home. My hands shook as I crossed the room toward the table. The silver laptop gleamed in the sunlight, the single orchid on top almost glowing. I sat down, entered the password Richard had left me, the date of our first meeting, followed by the word hope, and held my breath. The screen came to life, opening to a folder labeled Claire. Inside were hundreds of video files, each carefully dated. The earliest was recorded more than 3 years ago, the most recent just weeks before his death. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the first one. Richard's face filled the screen, not the pale, weakened man I remembered from the hospital, but healthy, vibrant, full of life. "Hello, my love," he said, smiling that crooked smile I had fallen in love with all those years ago. "If you are watching this, it means I am gone, and you came to Ridgewood despite my begging you not to. I should have known you could not resist. I have left you a message for each day of your first year without me. A year of explanations, a year of company, a year of truth." He paused, his eyes soft. "It begins with why I came back here to the house I swore never to see again. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a cerebral aneurysm. The doctors told me 2 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Olivia. I wanted our final years together to feel normal, not overshadowed by my illness." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I listened. He had carried this burden alone, silently building something in the shadows of his past. Before I could play the next video, a thunderous pounding rattled the front door. My heart leapt. Through the side window, I saw 3 men on the porch. They bore Richard's features, each in different stages of age. The eldest, with gray streaks in his hair, pounded again. "Mrs. Anderson," his voice rang out, "we know you are in there. We need to talk." I stepped back from the window, pulse racing. Richard had warned me in vague terms about his family, about their greed and hostility. Now here they were, standing at the threshold of the home he had left to me. The pounding grew louder, more insistent. I glanced back at the laptop, Richard's frozen face still on the screen, as if urging me to be strong. Outside, the brothers argued in low tones before pounding again. "I am Matthew, Richard's older brother," the man called. "With me are Daniel and Samuel. We have matters to settle about this property." Their words carried no warmth, no grief, only ownership. I clutched the laptop tighter. The answers I needed were here, not on the porch. The pounding at the front door finally subsided, replaced by the sound of muffled voices outside. I stayed frozen, afraid to move, until the rumble of an engine signaled their retreat. From the window, I watched the black SUV roll slowly down the driveway. Relief washed over me, though I knew it would be temporary. They would be back. That evening, as I wandered through the house, I discovered a narrow hallway leading to the conservatory. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed humid, fragrant, alive. Dozens of orchids bloomed in neat rows, each one vibrant and rare. I moved closer, recognizing varieties I had once pointed out in passing years ago. Richard had found them all. He had created a living sanctuary of my passion. "Good evening, ma'am," a voice startled me. I turned quickly. A middle-aged woman stood among the flowers, a watering can in hand. She wore gardening clothes and carried herself with calm authority. "I am Mrs. Jenkins. Mr. Richard hired me to care for the orchids, and for the house, if anything happened to him." Her presence should have alarmed me, but instead it felt strangely reassuring. "Did you know my husband well?" I asked. She gave a small smile. "As well as he allowed anyone. He came here often these past 4 years. He oversaw every detail himself. This place was his project, his secret." I swallowed hard, emotions tangled between grief and awe. Miss Jenkins studied me, then lowered her voice. "There is something you should see, something Richard prepared in case his brothers ever showed up. Follow me." She led me through the conservatory to an old tool shed at the edge of the property. Unlike the beautifully restored house, the shed looked worn and forgotten, its paint chipped, its roof sagging. Inside, the air smelled of dust and earth. Mrs. Jenkins moved to the back wall, pushing aside crates until she revealed a trap door set into the concrete floor. "Richard called this the vault," she explained. "He had it built after his brothers first came snooping around last year. They never knew he saw them." With a heavy creak, she pulled the door open, revealing a ladder that descended into darkness. My stomach twisted with apprehension, but curiosity won. I climbed down after her. Fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing a wide underground room lined with file cabinets and maps pinned to the walls. A large table held neatly stacked folders and a computer monitor. This was no storage space. It was a war room. Mrs. Jenkins gestured around us. "Everything Richard learned about his brothers, their businesses, their schemes, it's all here. And more importantly, he uncovered the truth about the resort project." I moved to the wall where a massive map of Pinewood Lake was displayed. Red markings circled areas far beyond what had been publicly announced. "The resort is 3 times larger than what they admitted," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "And Ridgewood sits on the one piece of land they cannot move forward without." I stared at the map, realization settling like a weight in my chest. Richard had not just left me a house. He had left me leverage. The next morning I sat at the kitchen table of Ridgewood Estate, sipping coffee that tasted sharper than usual, when my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. Her voice carried a strange mix of hesitation and irritation. "Mom, why didn't you tell me about Dad's other house? Uncle Matthew just called me. He said you were trying to keep the estate all for yourself." My heart sank. They had reached her already. "Olivia, don't listen to them. This property was left to me directly by your father. He had his reasons." "But they said Dad wasn't in his right mind when he bought it," she countered. "They said the house was always meant to be divided among the brothers. And now they are willing to work with me if you refuse?" The words stung. My daughter, so young, so vulnerable in her grief, was being pulled into their orbit. "Olivia, please, I need you to trust me. There are things you don't know yet." Later that day, the black SUV returned, and this time Olivia stepped out of the passenger side. She walked with confidence, but her eyes betrayed confusion. The brothers followed behind her like shadows. "Mom, we need to talk," she said firmly as she entered the living room. "This place is incredible. Why didn't Dad tell us about it?" Before I could answer, Matthew stepped forward smoothly. "Because he wasn't thinking clearly, Naomi. He kept secrets. We are only here to make things fair." Olivia crossed her arms. "They offered me a plan. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for me, and 1/3 for them. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it?" I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Reasonable. That was their weapon. They were framing greed as fairness, and my daughter was starting to believe them. I took a deep breath. "Olivia, do you remember how your father always said stories change depending on who tells them? You've only heard their side. It's time you hear his." I retrieved the laptop from the table and pulled up the video Richard had labeled, "For Olivia, when she needs it." I handed it to her, my hands trembling. Her face paled as her father's healthy, smiling face filled the screen. "Hello, my brilliant girl," Richard said. "If you are watching this, I am gone. But before you believe anything your uncles tell you, there are truths you must know." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. For the first time since his death, she was hearing her father's voice again, not in memory, but in living color, and I prayed it would be enough to bring her back to me. 2 days later, the confrontation I had dreaded finally arrived. At exactly 10 o'clock, the black SUV pulled into the driveway once more. This time, it was not just the brothers. They brought a gray-haired man in a tailored suit who carried himself with the quiet confidence of money and power. "Good morning, Mrs. Anderson," Matthew said as if he were greeting a business associate. "This is Mr. Clayton, financial officer for Sterling Investments. He is here to ensure our conversation about the estate remains productive." I stood at the head of the long dining table I had carefully prepared. Legal documents, maps, and water glasses were laid out with precision. Olivia sat beside me, dressed in navy, her father's old watch on her wrist. She looked nervous, but her eyes were steady. "Please, have a seat," I said. The brothers settled in, their expressions smug, certain they were in control. Matthew leaned forward. "Claire, we are offering a fair solution. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for Olivia, and 1/3 for us. It honors the family's history while giving everyone something valuable." Olivia looked at me, her face torn between loyalty and temptation. I placed a hand on hers, then rose to my feet. "I appreciate your proposal," I said calmly, "but I think we need to discuss the estate in its entirety." With a click of the remote I had hidden beneath the table, a screen lowered from the ceiling. A detailed survey map of Ridgewood filled the room, highlighting all 25 acres. Mr. Clayton leaned forward, studying it with interest. "This exceeds the acreage you mentioned to me," he said slowly. "Because they left out the western section," I replied. "They called it undevelopable, but in reality, it holds the key to Phase 2 of the Pinewood Resort project." Another click, and the full plans appeared on the screen: golf courses, villas, and expansions that stretched far beyond the official announcements. Mr. Clayton's face darkened. "You told me these were rumors," he snapped at the brothers. Before Matthew could respond, the door opened, and another group entered. My attorney, followed by 2 executives from Summit Resorts, including their CEO, Mr. Alston. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Alston said smoothly. "We were invited here to clarify the resort's official position, and indeed, Ridgewood Estate is critical to our Phase 2 expansion." The color drained from the brothers' faces. Their plan to corner me had backfired spectacularly. I remained standing, my voice steady. "Gentlemen, this estate belongs to me. My husband left it to me legally and deliberately. Any attempt to dispute that will only expose your past actions I am prepared to share if necessary." For the first time, the brothers were silent. Olivia squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with pride. The battle for Ridgewood had shifted, and this time I was no longer on the defensive. In the weeks that followed, the storm began to calm. Legal documents were finalized, the brothers reluctantly withdrew their claims, and the estate was secured in my name. Yet the house was no longer just Richard's secret. It was my sanctuary, my inheritance, my future. Most mornings I found myself in the art studio Richard had prepared. At first I only stood there, overwhelmed by the sunlight pouring through the tall windows, the brushes lined in neat jars, the empty canvases waiting. Slowly, I picked up the brush again. One stroke led to another, until color began to return not just to the canvas, but to my life. One afternoon, Matthew returned alone. His shoulders were stooped, his face pale. "I am not here to fight," he said quietly. "I came to apologize." He handed me an old photograph, 3 boys under a tree, the smallest holding a tiny orchid. "Richard's first. I kept it," Matthew admitted. "I think it belongs with you now." I studied his face, saw exhaustion and regret where arrogance once lived. Forgiveness did not erase the past, but it softened something inside me. Perhaps legacy is not only about property but about the choices we make when revenge seems easier than compassion. As autumn settled over Pinewood Lake, I often sat on the porch of Ridgewood Estate, watching the light fade behind the trees. The house that once carried Richard's silence had become a place filled with his voice, his memory, and his foresight. Yet more than anything, it had become my own. Richard's last video still echoes in my mind. The house, the conservatory, the studio, they are not the inheritance, he told me. They are only tools. The real inheritance is possibility. And he was right. Ridgewood gave me the space to rediscover who I was beyond grief. A woman, an artist, a mother, someone capable of more than I imagined. Olivia now visits often, helping me care for the orchids, laughing again after months of sorrow. We are building something new together, not just preserving what was left behind, but shaping what comes next. That is legacy. Not money, not property, but the ability to continue, to create, to love. If this story touched your heart, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. And if you believe in stories of strength, love, and resilience, please like, share, and subscribe to The Art of Revenge. See you in the next story.